Hello.
Hello, hi. Teacher Tessa. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
It's Tessa.
Sorry?
Tessa.
Tessa. Cool. Nice to meet you.
Tessa. I
Of
notice it
course.
says Teresa up here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was confusing. Nice talking to you.
It's nice to talk to you also.
Thank you very much. Speaking of motivation, how can we motivate language learners?
Well, my situation is a little different from yours. I am here in the United States. The students that I teach have immigrated here to the United States. So I have extremes. I have people who have immigrated here. We'll pick one, let's say from Colombia.
Oh,
This student immigrated here from Colombia with a master's degree and had a very high ranking job in that country.
mm-hmm.
Came here and the student's reading is fluent, but to speak, you cannot understand. The accent of her Spanish is so heavy that you cannot understand her English, and she can't do any deeper English work, any higher learning levels. So with that particular student, her motivation is to learn so that she can get a better job, because she comes here to the United States and all she can get is an entry level position. And it was a good entry level position. It was teaching Spanish to students, which she was well qualified for, but she wanted to become a teacher, which means she had to get to the higher reading level. Her English skills had to become more fluent,
Mm-hmm.
and she had to be able to go to college again. So I have them come in at that level. I have them come in as low as one of my students immigrated here through the refugee camps of Kenya. And she can speak 3 languages. She can speak her birth language, she can speak Arabic, and she can speak English, but she can't read or write in any of them. So she has a job here in the US as a cook in a nursing home, but wants to be able to do more. Um, this particular student, she has to learn how to read. She can't even read. So that's how extreme my students are. So I have to begin by finding out, where are they? You know, and another thing that I've noticed with English learners, especially those who've immigrated here to the United States, they pretend.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very, very good pretenders in that they um, they pretend to understand what you're saying, and they're so good at it that you don't necessarily know. So as a teacher, you have to learn to ask the same question maybe 3 different ways all at one time, so that you can get out what is really going on. Because you can say, can you read? Yes. Yes, I can read. Then you introduce something. Can you read this to me? And for whatever reason, they might, oh, I'm a little shy, or I'm just not up on it today, or maybe they can do basic reading, so they'll do that. One, she had received she had gone to the doctor and received medication that has warning labels on it, and I was trying to explain to her what the warnings were on this particular medication, and she kept telling me she understood. And finally I said, um, do you want something to happen to your heart? And she's like, what, what are you talking about? And then I said, this warning is saying that it could cause problems with your heart. So you have to sometimes really dig into them, because they've been in this environment. They are functioning, they are working, they are adults. In many instances, the country that they came from, they were, highly employed in adults, and they come here and they're not.
I see.
So there's a bit of pride, and you have to learn how to work with all of that. So the biggest problem is usually finding out, where are they? Once you can get to that, and then you find out where do they want to go, choosing what motivates them is usually pretty easy, because let's say in the job of the woman that would like to go to college, she wants a better job. And the only way she'll get there is to learn English. So that's a big motivator. Does that answer your question?
Of course, yeah. You're exchanging the knowledge with teachers, actually. And all of these experiences are so valuable, so to speak. Okay, speaking of different ages, what is the difference between young learners and adults?
I find young learners, and we're going to be speaking, let's say, middle education to elementary. They are enthusiastic, vibrant, curious, and they're willing to learn just about any way, because it's all new to them and it's all exciting. When you get to the older learner, especially if they have to start from the beginning, they are not happy.
Why? How come?
Well, because they want to go further. They don't want to read Dick and Jane. They want to know about the news that's happening in the world. So you have to strategically seek out materials that will speak to an adult mind, but has beginning material in it, because you can't give them a basic newspaper article and say, run with this, because they can't read it. So you have to be able to find material that's beginner, but yet speaks to an adult mind that has much more on their mind than going outside to play with frogs.
I see. Exactly, definitely. Okay, what are the probable problems of students while they are studying and also learning? What sort of complaints, excuses that students might have or make, let's say, while they're
Well,
studying?
again, my case is a little different than yours. Most of my students, they have to learn it. They don't have a choice. They are in this country, and for them to succeed, they have to learn it. So they're generally motivated. But they do come up with all kinds of excuses. I've had, I've truly even had the dog ate it. And I'm like, okay, you don't have a dog. But they don't generally want to say that they didn't understand it. A lot of my students, their children will help them. The problem with that becomes the children are doing it and they are not doing it. And so they're not learning. And the children in many of these situations are speaking and learning for the parent.
Sad.
So that can be a problem. But with my learners, it's usually life experiences, something that's happened, a car accident, they've been hospitalized, they lost their job, you know, baby born, just many things. So I don't have people too often coming up with excuses that, you know, I just didn't do this because I didn't want to. They're usually more extreme than that.
I see. I see. Yeah, okay. Generally speaking, what sort of material would you recommend them to use? Like, of course, books, apps, websites, or some digital platforms, etc.
Um, I'm usually with my students. So we're using books. I choose books, magazines. We are generally in a library setting, so I can personally go with them and help them choose books. I choose according to what my learner is interested in. So if my learner's interested in gardening, then we start looking for gardening stuff. If they're interested in cooking, that one's really easy because I'm interested in cooking too. So, I mean, you can find all kinds of stuff on cooking. Another thing that I can do with my learners is I take them on field trips. So, I can take my learner to a grocery store and we can go through the grocery store together and talk about things. Those are also motivators that I use because I can give my student a break. Let's say we've been studying for 5-6 weeks and we're just having a really hard time with this material. I'll find a place like a museum or a park or
The
the
actual place.
school. Yeah, and take them to try to bring a learning to that place. Um, Sometimes, you know, you just need to take them out for coffee and let them sit and just chat for a while. So my list that I use, the other thing I use, I tell people bring in your mail, bring in your utility bill, bring in your doctor's invoice, bring in that piece of propaganda that came in your mailbox that you don't understand what it says. So, I mean, my list of what I can use is really long, and I'm not in a classroom like a normal classroom, and I don't have um, let's say, I'm trying to think of like administrators that I have to answer to for what I've taught.
I see.
So I have a broad scope of things that I can do with my students based on how comfortable they are and what they are willing to do.
I see. Yeah, of course. That is very cool. I really love that. Yeah, very cliche. Grammar and vocabulary. Which one is important and why? Or, in other words, we can say which one outweighs the other one. Next question is how can learners improve their grammar and also vocabulary?
The second answer is practice, 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 practice.
Obviously, yeah, yeah.
I think it depends on the level of the learner. If I have a beginning learner that really does not know the vocabulary, that's what I'm going to focus on. Because what good does it do me to focus on grammar when they don't even have the vocabulary to
To
know what
understand it.
to choose? Correct. Um, Most of my online learners, they are from other countries. They're usually high level TEFL learners. Those learners, I usually would choose grammar. And the reason why is because most of those learners have been learning English sometimes from middle school, and they watch American movies, they listen to American music, they have access to a lot of vocabulary already. They need to know how to put it together, especially if they're going to be sitting for the IELTS exam. They need to be able to write out sentences. They need to understand the sentences that they're reading. And the sentences that they're getting in those exams are dramatically different than the sentences that they're hearing in a Hollywood movie or a pop song. So that's where I make my choice. What does my learner need?
Of course. Fantastic. Very nice. Oh my God, I have to skip this question because obviously you're a native speaker, but let's ask, how did you personally learn English? Have you ever faced such question in your life?
I was born with the English language, of course, here in the United States.
Which state, may I ask?
I live in Michigan, and Michigan is a northern state. Where I live, I'm 3 hours away from Canada, a 3-hour car drive away from Canada. In fact, last weekend, I took a road trip, and every sign we drove past said, Canada's not letting you enter right now
How
because of
come?
the
COVID.
COVID-19. Yeah.
I see. I see.
Yeah. So it kept saying, unless it's an emergency, you can't cross the Canadian border. And I just found myself smiling because, most people wouldn't even think of seeing something like that when they're driving.
I see.
The US is also different than, let's say, like I've visited Turkey, Istanbul,
Really?
and it seems to me in your culture, you have access to hearing many languages on a daily basis.
Yeah,
That is
surely.
not true in the US. In the US, we hear English, 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 Spanish, English, 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 Spanish. So Spanish is the number 2 language in the United States now. So most English learners, when they choose a second language, they choose Spanish.
I see.
So
Okay, exactly. Very nice. Um, it says here, is it possible to learn multiple languages simultaneously? How would you recommend that?
I believe it is possible. And I actually put some time into this because I was learning Turkish and Farsi at the same time.
Come on, are you joking?
And I am not joking.
Really?
And I was learning, but depending on who I'd be speaking with, I would mess it up. So like in Farsi, excuse me, is bebashid.
Very good. Yeah.
But in Turkish, it's affedersin.
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 Mm-hmm.
So I might be talking to a Farsi speaker and say the Turkish word.
Oh my God.
And in reverse, I may be talking to the Turkish speaker and mix in Farsi words, and they're like, pardon? And I'm like, oh, I don't know which language I'm talking.
I see.
So but again, in the case of your the countries of the Middle East and even in England, um, the people are hearing extra languages. So I think it's a lot easier when people are hearing those extra languages to be able to pick them up and to probably pick up several of them at the same time. In fact, most people that live abroad, that were born abroad, they speak usually at a minimum 3 different languages. But you talk with a person from the US and they probably speak one language. So I think it is possible. I think that it depends on what you're exposed to, how much practice you're putting into it. And I think if you're really, really, really serious about a language, let's say in the case of learning English for the IELTS, that you should only practice English.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah. I am literally fed up with this question. How can learners improve their speaking abilities?
Practice, practice,
Totally
practice, practice,
sick and
practice.
tired of this. Just
Yes.
practice. Is there any magic that normally students are looking for?
Oh, they're always looking for magic. When I'm trying to learn another language, I'm looking for magic too, especially if I'm planning to travel there. But no, if there's a shortcut, I am unaware of it. Now, as I spoke of, a lot of the learners in other countries use, let's say, American movies, American music. I think that those are shortcuts in the aspect that it's something that you enjoy. So it's fun to learn. It's a lot more fun to learn a pop song that all your friends are learning too than it is to sit down and read a book that's probably boring on how to learn English. So that finding something that you enjoy that incorporates the language could be a shortcut in the aspect that it's fun. But you've got to practice, 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 and really you're putting the same amount of time into learning those songs usually as you would to sit down and study a text. You just don't recognize it because you're having more fun. So
Exactly. Definitely practice. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so accent and pronunciation. Would you please talk about these two different uh, topic, let's say, and after that, American English or British English?
So with those questions, I'm not sure what you're asking. Accent is different depending on where you live. And I'm speaking with English even here in the United States. Um, I live in northern United States, but I can talk to someone who lives in the southern United States and have great difficulty understanding them because of the accent, not because of the pronunciation or the words. It's the accent, and sometimes from region to region, some of the words are different. Usually you do pick them up because of media, but you know, depending on how sheltered you are, you might not know what someone's talking about. Um, American English, British English, Australian English,
Of
you
course,
know, they're all a little bit different.
of course.
So when I'm dealing with online learners, I stress over and over and over again that I am teaching American English because um, a lot of the online learners that I've dealt with, a lot of the English that they are learning is British. The formal learning has been British. And some of the words that they use, we do not use in the United States. And um, I've even I've had online learners submit writing assignments to me to review, and they have words in there that I've actually taken the time to look the word up because it is truly a word used in Britain or the UK, but not here in the United States. So before I say, oh no, this word's wrong, I have to look it up and say, oh, okay, this is a British word. This would be the American equivalent. So um, pronunciation, I don't, I think it's important depending on what you're using it for. If you're just learning English to learn English, I don't think that it's really that important, because most people are going to understand you. And here in the United States, we have people from every country that I'm aware of, and we all understand what they're saying, no matter how heavy their accent is or how thick the pronunciation is. We understand them. So, but if they're going into an academic setting or a business environment that requires proper English, then I'd say you need to work on your pronunciation. And in that case, I think they need sometimes to even reach out to a speaking coach to help them to properly say the words.
Mhm. Very good. Nice. Uh, okay. So, is it possible to learn English without going abroad?
Yes, I mean, the online students that I talk to have impeccable English and they've never left their country. So yes, I believe that they can learn the English just fine. There's so much available. I know one of your questions is technology.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
The final question.
yeah, so they have access to technology, and yeah, they don't ever need to leave their country. They probably don't need to leave their living room.
Exactly. Okay. How long will it take for a person to really learn every necessary elements of language to speak it properly?
Every necessary element requires years. Now, I have watched students, I've worked with students that can pick up basic speaking English and get by in nearly any conversation within 3 to 6 months if they are immersed in the language. And what I mean by that is they are living, breathing, speaking, eating English 3 to 6 months. They're good to go. Can they read and write it? No. But they can speak it. But to be very, very proficient requires having done the reading, the writing, the challenging situations. Um, Many of the online learners that I work with, these young men and women, they're professionals. Some of them even are in an area where they want to write academic texts. To do that requires years, and I know that they will accomplish it because they have the minds to do it, which is extraordinary. I admire them deeply, but they put a lot of work into it. They don't. It's not just fun for them. They have a motivation. They have a goal. They have a place that they're going, and they work it. And it took them years.
For approximately how long can you be so specific on that?
The ones that I've seen that are taking the English to an English level, let's say academic or business level, I think requires 4 to 6 years of higher level learning. Um, if you just want to get by in conversation, depending on how much time you're putting into it, 1 to 2 years, unless you're immersed. If you're immersed, it doesn't take that much time at all.
Okay, speaking of technology and education, do you think that the integration of these two elements, let's say, can be a good idea or can be harmful idea?
I believe technology is vital and important. I use technology every day, um, even to research what I want to teach my learners. I use technology to be able to play, let's say, discs or YouTube videos or something like that to my learners. Um, I I am constantly suggesting to my learners, if this is something that you have an interest in, Google it, and you'll find nearly everything that you need for it by doing that. Um, in some areas, even in the United States, there are people that do not have access to technology. And in those cases, I do the best I can without it. But as a teacher, and even for my student, I would prefer the access to technology. So, my learners, as I said, I'm usually teaching in a library setting. I choose where I do have access to a blackboard. And I do use, I use hard books. I use paper and pencil to get them, what am I trying to think of? To get them to use it. I think that it's very important that they're reading and writing. You should speak it, you should write it, and if they're just using technology, they may not be doing that. They may just be listening. They might not even be, let's say that we give them, say, hey, go watch this video with teacher Misam.
May Sam, yes.
He's excellent and he can teach you a lot. So they sit and watch it, but they don't take notes. They don't try to repeat what you say. So, like say, you should listen to the video and stop it here and there and try to repeat what he said. They may not be doing that. So I feel that both are important. I would not want to be left with the academic books and paper only. But if, as I said, there are students even here in America that is all I have access to, and I use it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yes, exactly. I would say the balance is very important. I mean, too much of everything is dangerous, no
Yes.
matter what. Too much of technology can be dangerous. Too much of lack of technology can also be dangerous. I mean, we have to maintain that balance, so to speak. Yeah. Well, of
Well,
course, yeah.
and to help somebody, usually as a teacher, we're trying to help our students progress into the future,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
they need technology for the future.
Sure.
So they have to learn it.
Exactly. 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 Yeah. Definitely. Of course, there are a lot of questions, but I chose these questions because they were frequently asked questions by mostly students. So I thought it could be a good idea to ask these questions from different teachers around the world, especially native speakers, native teachers. But yeah, of course, maybe in the future we can come up with some other topics or issues, let's say, and we can maybe exchange ideas or experiences.
Well, can you tell me, the teachers that you've talked with, do our answers seem to be very similar? Are our situations similar?
Some of
Um,
them, yeah, some of them were so obvious. For example, how can I improve my speaking ability? So, I mean, as you said, there is no magic, there is no miracle or whatever. Just practice. I mean, every single teacher, as far as I remember, everybody actually said practice, practice, practice. Yeah, but of course, yeah. I mean, every teacher's quotes and experience is so valuable. I really and highly appreciate it.
Yes.
Uh, so actually, these stuff can, of course, be good for me too as a teacher. I am using these stuff. Uh, but of course, let's see what will happen in the future. Maybe we can, how can I say, explore some other issues or some, I mean, we can go deeper. Who
I think
knows?
I think it's excellent for teachers to share ideas and share time together. I You are the first person besides um, Husheng Academy.
Yes, of course, I know him. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You and he are the only two that I've ever really compared notes with, but Husheng does a lot of interviews with other teachers that I do listen to, and they, they do have ideas that I had never thought of before. So I find it very valuable. I think it would be wonderful if we did create a space where we could all kind of come to and exchange ideas.
Of course. Thank you very much. Of course. Indeed, I'm trying to. I'm doing my best. Of course, uh, we cannot be perfect, but we are trying to be better than yesterday, let's
Yes.
say. Yeah, cool. Thank you very much, teacher, for your
Well, thank
valuable
you.
time and valuable codes that you mentioned with us, shared with us,
Thank
like
you.
that.
You have a wonderful evening. I know it's very late for you right now.
No, it is not late. It is normal. Likewise, have a really wonderful. Is that morning over there?
It is afternoon for me, and I actually am, after we finish this conversation, going to be leaving to take my child to work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, cool. Have a lovely, let's say, evening, because afternoon is evening.
yes, okay. A very good one to you too. Thank you so
Likewise,
much.
likewise, likewise. My pleasure. Have a good time. Take care of
Bye.
yourself. Bye bye.